Hello again, and welcome to another All Nation Line video. This video is the third in my series of videos that I've been doing for 3-rail to 2-rail conversions. Today we're going to talk about converting the MTH GP60M, and what I have is basically a body shell as a starting point. And in front of you is the chassis that we've designed to accommodate either a dummy engine, unpowered, powered, or the use of different types of Blomberg trucks. So first of all, I want to show you just the chassis. And I'm going to take it off some dummy trucks, which are All Nation trucks that were spray painted silver for another model. But in any event, this comes in 4 pieces, and the profiles on the ends to the front and the back are such that they will lay right into the body of the engine. And then we have the bridge work here in the chassis to accommodate a motor, usually a motor of a diameter around 30 millimeters. And this all comes apart. It comes with a fuel tank. It's not fully detailed, but the idea is to get a good start on a conversion, and this is really the starting point. And as you can see, or we'll see here in a minute, you could actually use P&D trucks and set the chassis on the P&D trucks and get a pretty good idea that trucks are fairly interchangeable. And if you wanted to power this unit, my suggestion would be either a single or dual powered towered drive. If you're going single, I usually put the tower drives in the rear end. And there's also the possibility of having a direct drive from the single tower drive to a truck on the other end that would be using the smaller gearboxes and attached via drive shaft and universals. So if we swap out the P&D truck and use our All Nation Blomberg trucks, they set in there just very nicely, and this already has a universal joint on it for installation on another engine I'm working on. And if I line them up, you would be able to see that a through drive shaft through the fuel tank would work just about as well as 2 tower drives. Now, a quick look at the underbody of the GP60 MTH model shows you that it's a little different than some of the other MTH front ends and back ends on the underside. And what we've done is we've designed this in our CAD program so that when you put the 2 end platforms together with the bridge work here in the center, it'll fall right into place, and you have 2 mounting screws on either end, and it may be such that you would have to back these handrails out just a little bit so that this sets flatter, and you can either trim these so they're a little bit shorter, or you could actually drill so that you push them in to the platforms here. And when all is said and done, you've got a chassis that's ready to take a motor and power. It really is that simple, and that's a good starting point if you're interested in doing a 3-rail, 2-rail conversion, or if your mechanisms have totally given out or worn out and you can't repair them. You can go to our using our transmissions in this particular configuration rather easily and get your engine back on the layout and running again. Today we're going to talk about our kit for kit bashing a conversion on MTH GP60 engine. And here I have the shell with no mechanisms or anything in it, and we're going to show you our kit that is a chassis that will fit nicely into the body for either an unpowered or powered locomotive. What you see before you are the parts in this kit. We have two end platforms, one for the front, one for the rear, which will connect to these bridges here that will also be able to house a motor, and the fuel tank will use the 440 by 3/8 inch machine screws to attach the fuel tank to the bridge. There's also an end cap for the fuel tank. However, this fuel tank would facilitate a drive shaft that would go through from one truck to another, depending on how you want to configure and power the locomotive later on. So initially we're going to show you how to make this into a dummy engine, and we supply 4 440 1/4-inch flathead brass screws to attach the platforms to the bridges. So here's the platform in its first stage of assembly, where we've snugged up the 2 screws for each platform to the bridge, what I call the bridge for the motors. And if you flip this over, this will go in the inside of the body, and probably the first thing you want to do is just check, make sure it fits well into the body of the engine. There's always that possibility where something hangs up, and as a good example was these long wires on the handrails. I pull those out a little bit so this would sit in here nice and flat, because you want to have it flush as much as possible. So it snaps right in, and you can put these 2 screws in. It may be you'll want to cut this a little short, or maybe drill a pilot hole in there so that you can slip that longer handrail into the chassis. So there is what it looks like without the fuel tank on. Now the next step would be to take a look at your fuel tank and notice that the gauge sides will go approximately like so. So we'll assemble that next. And you'll also note that with this cradle in here, a standard motor will just rest really nicely in there like that, with a couple of face plates or hold downs, or even a Pitman motor could be used. So in the future, if you wanted to power this, you'd be able to use tower drives on either end or both, and you'll have a really nice running locomotive. So here is the chassis with the fuel tank mounted onto the bridge, motor bridge, and then it's going to, like I say, pop back into the body. And just to illustrate again why we have these little rounds here, is we want to be able to locate a couple additional screws if necessary, and we would take these little pieces here, or plugs as I call them, and drill and tap them for a small screw, and then mark where they will be glued, plug them in, and then drill a clearance hole in this and lay this over the top. So you can always be able to take this model all the way apart for servicing. And CA glue or JB Weld will work just fine on these. And that will work and not require you to be drilling and tapping into the body, because while you could do that on this side and there's airspace under here, you cannot do the same on this other side without coming through the floor, so to speak. It's pretty thin material, so it wouldn't give you much of a bite in terms of trying to drill and tap, and you probably don't want to come through the floor. So now the model is ready if you wanted to test mounting your trucks onto the chassis. Take a look at where you are height-wise and clearances. We want to check clearances, and there's usually always enough clearance for tight curves and enough clearance for any type of tower drives on this particular model. And we think that you'll have versatility in not only using the all-nation Blomberg trucks, but also a truck like P&D. We have pilots available as well that mount to the chassis if they're needed. You may already have pilots, so you might not need those, but the completed kit with the parts as shown earlier is what we have available to get you from a 3-rail version to a 2-rail version. I would say that there's always a possibility that some of these parts may come with some support material from the printing on the 3D printer that needs to be removed and cleaned up with a light file. And where the kingpins come through, there'll be support material in there which you may keep or you may remove depending on how you want to mount your truck. So in the case of a Blomberg truck that you would get from All Nations with this kingpin and a C-clip, you'd probably want to take out the support material there so that the clip fits nicely. This side view gives you a little bit different look on the profile with the body mounted on the chassis. I want to note here too that we do have pilots for front and back. If you do not have those, we 3D print those, and they are slightly different for the GP60, and we will likely have a snowplow on the front one. So